A vicious attack in the middle of the day outside a church.
I saw a man swing what looked like a machete.
We talk with a lifelong resident who was there when it all happened.
We are really seriously talking about leaving Baltimore City.
Governor Wes Moore calling Freddie Gray's death a turning point for Baltimore, how the city has changed since that day. City leaders taking steps to breathe new life into Baltimore's Harbor Place, how public safety issues could affect the area's redevelopment. A man accused of murder in Georgia is spotted in Harford County.
We have every reason to believe that not only he's armed and dangerous, but also that he's capable of great violence.
The manhunt for a suspected killer in tonight's Maryland's Most Wanted.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Bubala.
And I'm Kai Jackson. We're coming to the end of a violent week in Baltimore. In the past few days, we've seen a 12-year-old shot and killed, and 16-year-old is fighting for his life, and we're not getting many answers from city leaders.
And now we are hearing about an attack near a Fells Point church in the middle of the morning.
Apparently, there was some type of argument, and a guy got hit with a machete. To see something like that happen, it's troublesome.
And unbelievable. Fox 45 News is covering all angles of the crime crisis. Jeff Abel examines the police union's assessment of Baltimore's problems, while Maxine Stryker questions why leaders and public safety officials won't acknowledge gangs in Baltimore.
Our team coverage, though, begins with Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor. She joins us live with more on that Fells Point attack that has one lifelong resident ready to leave. Rebecca?
Well, sadly, residents that I spoke with said this brutal violence is just a sign of the time. Some even fear the only way to escape the city's crime crisis is escaping the city altogether.
For a person that grew up here,
beside the corner of Bank and Broadway, tucked behind the shadows of St. Patrick's Catholic Church,
my parents grew up here,
is the only home Ed Marcinko has ever known.
same neighborhood, it's night and day. It's night and day.
He says what was once a safe space to live and raise a family
Crime is picking up in the neighborhood,
has taken a troubling turn.
and it seems like it's getting worse.
Marcinko claims one of the budding hotspots for chaos is the church steps.
They sleep and drink, they defecate, they urinate on the steps. Once every 1 or 2 weeks, we always see a paramedic.
But Thursday morning, the unrest reaching new heights.
I saw a commotion. I saw a bunch of people running around, yelling.
He says 1 minute he was watching a group of 8 to 10 men arguing. The next,
I saw a machete swinging in the air.
with a blade he estimates to be at least 2 feet long.
You never see that happen that early in the morning.
According to police, around 9:30, officers responding to the alleged stabbing finding a 34-year-old man with 2 slashes in his back. Police say medics were then called, however, the victim refusing medical attention.
It really breaks my heart because I knew the neighborhood as it was.
For Marcinko,
Would you ever leave?
I'm thinking about it.
unless he starts to see more attention and action from city leaders, the lifelong Baltimorean says he'll be left looking for a way out.
High property tax bill, high water bill, and we have to deal with this kind of crime issue. It's not worth it anymore.
And Marcinko is far from the only one considering moving out of Baltimore. According to data from the U.S. Census, Baltimore City's population has been plummeting for the past decade. Reporting live in Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Thank you, Rebecca. A 16-year-old remains in critical condition after he was shot in the head yesterday. Homicide detectives are investigating. Police say it happened along Carver Road in Cherry Hill, but they haven't released a motive at this time. Neighbors say the incident has them on edge.
I lived in the city all my life, and I'm 70. But I don't know these children. They probably grandchildren. You know, I don't know.
You're saying I don't know. Is it kind of like a just feeling at a loss? Like you don't know the answer? You don't know?
I don't know the answer to what's going on, you know. It's terrible out here.
Well, according to data that we examined, at least 30 young people have been shot and survived so far this year. 9 young people have been killed, and that includes 12-year-old Jalen Richards. His family now crying out for change. They're demanding city leaders do something about the gang violence they say is gripping Baltimore. But as Maxine Stryker explains, city leaders are slow to talk about gangs.
My son's life ran out, like I said, to the streets of Baltimore City.
A 12-year-old boy's life cut short Saturday on the streets of Baltimore City. Jalen Richards' family says he was on house arrest for theft charges, but they say it's all because he was hanging out with the wrong crowd.
They still was dragging my baby to the streets because he was a minor.
Patty Hawkins says her son was in a similar grip of gang violence, being influenced by adults in Baltimore.
It's easier to have children sell drugs for you than you to get a charge yourself to sell drugs. For me to know that my son was struggling with keeping himself out of a gang and didn't know how to communicate with me, that really hurt.
Experts say many gangs have emerged in Baltimore over the years.
What we've seen is that a significant amount of the homicides and the non-fatal shootings that are in Baltimore City are driven by those drug trafficking organizations. And sometimes they're killing and shooting at rival members. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's also innocent bystanders who were just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
That was John Lenzer, deputy to the U.S. Attorney in Maryland in 2021, admitting gangs are a problem in Baltimore. Federal and state law enforcement have both said they fuel a lot of violence.
Gun violence driven mostly by drug trafficking and area gangs, as well as overdose deaths caused by deadly drugs like fentanyl, have been our main problems across Maryland.
Just this week, the U.S. Attorney's Office announced a Cherry Hill gang member was sentenced to 21 years in prison for crimes including murdering a rival gang member. And in December 2022, Baltimore area MS-13 gang members were also indicted for murder. Months prior, 12 members of a criminal enterprise who called themselves the ABG, operating out of West Baltimore, were arrested for murder.
They don't affiliate around symbols, colors and things like that. It's really more of a business organization that is assembled around drugs and violence or other criminal activity.
But at the time, city leaders weren't quick to label the violence as gang-related.
It's a social network of people who were selling drugs.
Baltimore Police Commissioner Michael Harrison instead calling the group a social network.
The fear of city leaders to confront these problems are the reason these problems are perpetuated.
Rhetoric professor Richard Vatt says city leaders are avoiding the problem, much like they avoided our questions this week, asking if there's a trend of adults using children to commit crime and if there's a gang problem.
Your questions are quite relevant, quite material, and to answer those questions, they have to admit that they simply will not act in a serious way to curtail this criminality.
Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Well, Fox 45 News sent questions to the mayor's office asking, is there a trend of adults using children to commit crimes in the city? If so, should lawmakers at the state level revisit shielding some of these kids from the charges? And what's your message to these families? We also sent a few questions to Baltimore Police Commissioner Michael Harrison's office asking, does Baltimore City have a gang problem? If so, what do you say to Baltimoreans who are concerned about gang activity? No answers. Earlier this week, we asked lawmakers in Annapolis what policies should change to ensure kids are being held accountable when they commit crime. We have not heard back. Well, we want to know what you think at home. Are lawmakers refusing to acknowledge how their decisions impact public safety? So far, 95% of voters say yes. The poll is open right now at foxbaltimore.com/vote.
The Baltimore Police Union fires back at Governor Wes Moore's tweet marking the anniversary of Freddie Gray's death. The governor calls it a turning point in Baltimore. The police union says Gray's death and the events that followed is a driving factor for Baltimore's crime crisis. Fox 45's Jeff Abel has a closer look. Jeff?
Well, the governor's tweet amounted to 2 short sentences, but for many people who read it, it could take a while before they recover.
We have probable cause to file criminal charges.
It was 8 years ago when former state's attorney Marilyn Mosby charged 6 city police officers with the death of Freddie Gray. The very next year, 3 of the cases ended in acquittals, 3 others were dismissed. But a tweet from the governor this week reopened some very old wounds. Freddie Gray's death was a turning point, the governor tweeted, not just for those who knew him, but for all of Baltimore. Honoring his memory means continuing to fight for justice and accountability responsibility. So what happened to him and far too many others never happens to anyone else.
Digging up this old wound by the governor, I think, was not a good idea.
In fact, the governor's tweet prompted a fiery response from the Fraternal Order of Police, who reminded the governor that all of the accused officers in the case were found either not guilty or had their cases dismissed. The union leader wrote that the event was a turning point in that since the murder rate has exceeded 300 deaths per year and Baltimore has lost too many police officers, instead of commending the men and women who risk their lives on a daily basis, you choose to pay homage to a drug dealer.
It was a turning point, but not in a positive way. So I don't know that you can look back and celebrate this as some great moment where things started to turn around when in fact they turned in the wrong direction.
Not long after the governor tweeted, Maryland's lieutenant governor unleashed a tweet of her own, writing that 8 years ago, Freddie Gray, a native Baltimorean, unjustly lost his life at the hands of police brutality, urging fairness and protection for all. Political experts say state leaders and union leaders both went too far.
This is an unforced error. There was no need for the governors to bring this up, and the FOP's reaction was rather nuclear.
While all the officers were cleared in that case, the city did settle a $6 million lawsuit, a civil suit with the family of Freddie Gray. We're live tonight. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Temperatures a little bit milder tonight than they were last night at the same time, and temperatures are now in the 60s, even near 70 at Westminster. Some mainly clear skies, and that's how it remains overnight. Not as cold. Mostly clear, 63 at 11. At 5 a.m., you're waking up to 56 instead of the 48 we woke up to this morning, and then 62 for tomorrow as we start the day. And look at this, some potential record warmth for tomorrow. We're going to threaten the record by 1 degree. 87 the forecast high tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to let you know how long it lasts and some air quality hazards that are in place for some of us. My Weather Authority forecast.
Next on Fox 45 News at 10, the mayor touts his flagship gun violence interruption program, Safe Streets, as a success, citing a Johns Hopkins study. Tonight, Fox 45 News uncovers who commissioned that analysis. New developments in the Hunter Biden IRS investigation. The whistleblower's latest claims about the probe into the president's son and his business dealings. And still ahead, Maryland's corrections officers crying out for help. The shortages that make their work hard and the conditions for inmates less safe.
Mayor Brandon Scott doubles down on his community violence intervention efforts to curb crime. Part of that plan includes Safe Streets.
And Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost has been investigating the gun violence prevention program and explains from the accountability desk what questions remain.
We're investing in improving intervention efforts through Safe Streets to mediate conflicts and stop them from escalating to violence.
That's Mayor Brandon Scott during his State of the City address on Monday, making it clear Safe Streets is here to stay. But as you know, we've been investigating the organization, transparency, and accountability, as well as the effectiveness of the Safe Streets program for more than a year and a half. And that brings us back here to the whiteboards. These are the 10 different Safe Streets locations, and we know that the management system of them are changing after the mayor made those announcements, consolidating to just 2 community-based organizations overseeing all 10 locations. LifeBridge and Catholic Charities now overseeing the implementation of the Safe Streets program in all of the different locations, but it's done all with the oversight of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, or MONSE. Shantae Jackson is the director of MONSE, and we know that that also means she oversees the implementation of the Safe Streets program. And remember that State of the City address from the mayor on Monday? Well, he touted a report we've been waiting for.
An external evaluation from Hopkins demonstrated the impact that sites like Safe Streets right here in Cherry Hill has on reducing homicides and non-fatal shootings by 22 and 23% on average.
Mayor Scott doesn't mention the fact that the city paid Hopkins nearly $150,000 to complete that study. The findings do note that not every single location saw a reduction in gun violence. The mayor's also touting the number of Safe Streets mediations completed. And that brings us to some of our questions that still remain unanswered. How is a mediation defined? We also keep asking the city for the names of the violence interrupters, but the city says that providing that information will put those employees at risk. Who's ensuring the workers are doing what they're getting paid to do? And how is that accountability being done? We'd love to talk with Shantae Jackson, the director of MONSE, about those questions and the entire Safe Streets program, but she's refused to sit down with us for an interview for more than a year. We're also still reviewing hundreds of pages of contracts between the city and these community-based organizations operating Safe Streets, so we're not done digging for answers. At the accountability desk, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie has been investigating the Safe Streets program for more than a year. You can find all of her past reporting on our website, foxbaltimore.com.
A trial date is set for the man accused of shooting 2 police officers in Baltimore County. David Linthicum was denied pretrial release and is set to stand trial November 2nd. He's facing multiple charges, including attempted murder. The manhunt for Linthicum started February 8th. His father called police saying his son was suicidal. During the response, Linthicum allegedly fired at officers and escaped. Residents in Cockeysville had to shelter in place as police searched for him. Linthicum is also accused of shooting and critically injuring an officer. He was eventually caught in Falston, Harford County on February 10th. In Anne Arundel County, teenage girls who police allege stole a car are under arrest. It happened on Tall Pines Court in Glen Burnie. A caller told police they saw 3 people break into a car and drive off. After a short chase, police located the car and say they caught 2 of 3 suspects. Both are 14-year-old girls. Police believe the 3rd suspect is also a teenage girl.
Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown is calling on the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to recall several Hyundai and Kia models over theft concerns. Brown says those car companies are failing to address safety issues, which are putting lives at risk. He says Hyundai and Kia are putting the burden of safety on the owners rather than taking proactive steps. Meanwhile, Baltimore County Police are holding another free steering wheel lock pop-up event tomorrow morning. Kia and Hyundai owners can go to the Randallstown substation starting at 9 in the morning to pick up a free lock. You can find more on our website, foxbaltimore.com/newslinks.
A new direction for Harbor Place in the face of recent violence and chaos in the area. How concerns about public safety could impact the future for the tourist destination.
New developments in the Hunter Biden investigation.
I'm Scott Thuman in Washington with a closer look at the allegations of political interference.
And although the weather is going to be nice and warm and dry, unfortunately, we do have an air quality alert in effect for areas north and west of the city for tomorrow. Keep that in mind in Howard County, Carroll County, northern Baltimore County, and northwestern Harford County. Those with pre-existing respiratory issues, the young, the elderly, all going to have to spend some extra time inside. Unfortunately, a very nice day. Actually, could threaten some record highs, 87 degrees. The forecast high, I'm going to let you know what the record is and how long the heat lasts in my Weather Authority forecast.
Taking a look now at the Fox box, top left, a measure to ban the sale and transfer of semi-automatic firearms failed to pass Colorado's democratically controlled legislature. 3 Democrats broke ranks on this bill, voicing concern about government overreach.
On the top right, the U.S. is deploying forces to prepare for a possible evacuation of embassy staff in Sudan. More than 300 people have been killed, including an American, since the fighting began between government forces and a paramilitary uprising.
Bottom left, Disney is planning another round of layoffs as part of a goal to slash 7,000 jobs before summer. According to Bloomberg, the new cuts next week will impact theme parks, entertainment, and corporate teams. Disney-owned ESPN could also send out some pink slips, according to CNBC.
On the bottom right, many of Twitter's blue check marks are now disappearing. The verified users who do not pay for Twitter Blue have already lost the badge. Some, however, remain. Anyone paying the $8 monthly fee can get the designation.
New revelations tonight surrounding the federal investigation into President Biden's son, Hunter. There are allegations of tax crimes and that Hunter may have offered access to his father.
Now, an IRS employee claims to have evidence that shows the investigation into the younger Biden has been handicapped by politics.
Sinclair's chief political correspondent Scott Thuman with the latest.
Hunter Biden back in the spotlight as CBS News reports a supervisory special agent at the IRS could soon testify on the Hill that the investigation into the president's son has been intentionally hampered by politics, and says he has evidence to contradict Attorney General Merrick Garland's testimony that the case has been above board.
To him, the truth is one truth, and he wants to come forward with it. The things he's been through are very well documented in emails and other communications with the Department of Justice.
The White House telling Fox News President Biden's made clear this matter would be handled independently by the Justice Department, free from any political interference, and he has upheld that commitment. Though President Biden has long insisted his son did nothing wrong while being paid by an overseas energy company, others call it influence peddling. Not terribly unlike similar accusations against former President Trump and his son-in-law Jared Kushner. House Republicans now digging deeper into the Biden accusations.
We found a lot that's certainly unethical. We found a lot that should be illegal. The line is blurry as to what is legal and not legal with respect to family influence peddling.
Meanwhile, as to the Hunter Biden laptop saga, the New York Post now says sworn testimony indicates a letter signed by 50-plus former intelligence officials 2 weeks before the election falsely claimed reports of damning emails on Biden's laptop were just Russian disinformation.
I believe most of them were probably misled, but by who? And they were clearly used politically. Who used these intelligence experts to try to affect the outcome of the 2020 election?
And the New York Post alleging that now Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who was working on the Biden campaign, was one who suggested the laptop was a Russian plant. In Washington, I'm Scott Thuman.
Maryland correctional officers raising red flags about their safety, just how bad the officer shortage is and the results we're seeing.
The latest battle over transgender rights playing out today on the House floor. I'm Kayla Gaskins in Washington.
We're following three big stories at 10:30.
The latest battle for trans rights playing out on the House floor today. What lawmakers decided about transgender women competing in female sports.
Maryland correctional officers are raising red flags about staffing shortages, their concerns for their safety.
Harbor Place was once the crown jewel of Baltimore. One economist calls it lifeless now.
That population of visitors is simply not coming downtown the way it once did. There's just a lifelessness there.
Harbor Place is heading in a new direction, but it could still face the same public safety problems that we see in other parts of the city.
Fox 45's Amy Simpson has details of the plans for redevelopment.
As the new developer officially takes control of the lease of Harbor Place here behind me, we've also learned they've established a 3-year development period, and investment could exceed $1 billion. A sunny spring day along the Inner Harbor. For visitors, few options for lunch or shopping, but change is on the way.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Thank you so much.
This week, Baltimore City's Board of Estimates greenlighting next steps to breathe new life into this once bustling part of Baltimore.
This allows us to officially now move forward with the reimagining and the redeveloping of Harbor Place.
The Baltimore Development Corporation acknowledging the site's downfall.
For the last couple years, the property has been, I think, in limbo is a nice way to put it.
As city leaders approve developer P. David Bramble and MCB Real Estate to officially take over the Harbor Place lease. But earlier this month, a large chaotic crowd prompting this police response on a weeknight. A few days later, 2 teens shot along Pratt Street, only steps away from those Harbor Place pavilions. 2 recent examples of the public safety challenges this redevelopment process could face.
What we've seen, I think, in recent years is that criminality has spread across the city, that no place really feels that safe. Well, that's a problem, obviously.
A Baltimore economist weighing in on the next chapter for Harbor Place.
This needs to be akin to something that will bring people back to Baltimore, including all those suburbanites.
Saying public safety is just one component to make this site worth visiting.
If people feel safe in a particular part of Baltimore City, they will still come, even if other parts remain quite dangerous.
Today, I asked the developer how both public safety and crime prevention are being included in these redevelopment plans. And in a statement, Bramble tells me, as a Baltimore City resident, public safety is a top priority for him. He says they've been working with both the private sector and City Hall to improve safety and will continue to stress the importance of it as this process continues. In Baltimore, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Today, Maryland's corrections officers are speaking out about staffing shortages they say are putting them at risk. They say prison staffing is thousands below what it should be. Brad Bell from our Sinclair sister station in Washington has more.
Behind the fences of Maryland's prisons, correctional officers say their staffing levels have gotten so low that they're in danger.
We had a officer get assaulted brutally. The officer is still out and missing an eye because he was alone with more than 5 detainees. And the post in the area called for at least 2 officers to be there.
The officers and leaders of their union AFSCME today speaking out and releasing this report on staffing levels statewide. It was put together by the officers and the union. It claims that 3,400 officers need to be hired to safely operate the State Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services.
Without safer staffing levels, the safety of everyone in the facilities are sacrificed. Officers are working 80 hours a week. They're getting drafted left and right, plus they're working overtime.
The Correctional System's website offers up to $7,500 in hiring and retention bonuses with starting pay just over $50,000. A spokesperson for the state says 2,000 workers have been hired since the pandemic. The union wants the pace to quicken.
We want people that go to work and do a hard job and do a very dangerous job to come back in the same condition they went to work in.
Now, Governor Wes Moore has pledged to hire as many as 10,000 state workers to fill vacancies created during the term of Governor Larry Hogan. But one source tells me with a statewide workforce of about 6,000 in the Department of Corrections, it's unlikely that 3,400 more correctional officers will be hired like the union wants. In Jessup, Brad Bell, Fox 45 News.
The union has other suggestions for addressing staffing and increasing hiring. That includes streamlining hiring efforts by screening for pre-employment requirements and providing better retirement packages.
The family of an inmate who died in a filthy Atlanta area jail cell met with the sheriff today. Their lawyer wants a criminal investigation and says a civil suit is possible. 35-year-old LaShawn Thompson was found dead in his Georgia cell covered in bed bugs last September. An independent autopsy has been ordered since the original exam left the cause of death undetermined. The family is sharing pictures of the purported cell and Thompson's injuries.
What happened to LaShawn Thompson is a human rights violation. You cannot call it anything but. Even the sheriff agreed it was deplorable conditions, like a third world country.
Well, the Fulton County Sheriff is vowing sweeping changes at the jail, including $500,000 to address the infestation of bed bugs, lice, and vermin. Some inmates will be transferred to relieve jail overcrowding, and some jail officials have resigned.
The suspect accused of opening fire on a 6-year-old and her father in North Carolina has turned himself into police. Authorities say the man started shooting after a basketball accidentally rolled into his yard. The girl suffered minor injuries, but her father was shot through the back as he tried to protect children from the bullets.
He looked at my husband dead in the face and he said, "I'm gonna kill you."
This incident is the 4th time in the past week that ordinary mistake led to young people being shot. In Kansas City, of course, police say a 16-year-old was shot after ringing the wrong doorbell. In Texas, 2 teenage cheerleaders in their uniforms were shot when they approached the wrong car at a grocery store parking lot. And in upstate New York, a 20-year-old was killed after she and her friends turned onto the wrong driveway.
Prosecutors plan to drop the involuntary manslaughter charge against actor Alec Baldwin. Baldwin was rehearsing a scene for his Western film Rust when the gun in his hand went off, killing cinematographer Helena Hutchins. Baldwin denies pulling the trigger, and it's not clear if the charge will be dropped against the weapons supervisor for the film, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed.
Taking a live look at Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., where the latest fight over transgender rights played out on the House floor today. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has more on the debate centered around women's sports.
Advocates say it's about protecting women.
All of the glass ceilings that have been shattered by women in sports have been for naught if we allow this to continue.
On Thursday, the Republican-led House passing a bill essentially banning transgender women from competing in female sports at federally funded schools by requiring Title IX compliance to recognize sex at birth.
For years, the left has said to follow the science. Well, today, Republicans are following the science. We are not confused about the differences between biological men and biological women.
Every House Democrat voting against.
The other side does not even want to acknowledge that transgender kids exist.
Prominent ESPN host Samantha Ponder coming out in support of the GOP bill with a tweet ending in the hashtag #SaveWomen'sSports. Ponder seemingly bucking her employer. ESPN's coverage has featured trans athletes, even naming trans swimmer Leah Thomas an honoree for Women's History Month. Former University of Kentucky swimmer Riley Gaines tied Leah Thomas at nationals, but there was just one trophy to take home. NCAA officials gave it to Leah.
This NCAA official reduced everything that I had worked my entire life for, every girl at that meet had worked their entire life for, down to a photo op for a male.
In 2020, Full Measure's Cheryl Atkinson sat down with 3 Connecticut high school athletes who had to compete against trans women.
Have all of you lost races and competitions to biological males?
Yes, we all have.
Okay. How many races?
Too many to count.
Some on the left saying simply debating the issue is leading to harm.
This mere debate has traumatized trans kids and their families across the country.
The legislation has virtually no shot of passing the Democratic-led Senate. The White House saying President Biden would veto the bill in the slim chance it lands on his desk. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
Well, Democrats are rejecting the Republican plan to tackle the debt ceiling crisis. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy announced a proposal yesterday calling for federal spending to be cut back to 2022 levels and future spending increases to be capped at 1%. Right now, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says if the plan passes the House, it will be dead on arrival in the Senate. House Republicans are standing by the plan, claiming it doesn't make sense to authorize more borrowing and spending before addressing the root causes of the crisis.
What I have seen so far, I think it's a very positive step in the right direction.
Wall Street billionaires are not asked to pay even a nickel under McCarthy's bill. Hurt the parents, hurt the kids, hurt law enforcement, hurt small businesses, but leave the billionaires alone?
The Treasury Department warns the country risks not being able to pay its bills by June if the ceiling isn't raised. J.P. Morgan says there's a, quote, non-trivial risk of a first-ever debt default as early as next month.
The murder of a 13-year-old Georgia boy is making shockwaves here in Maryland. Why the suspect was in Harford County and how he was able to get away from police in tonight's Maryland's Most Wanted. Ahead on the late edition, devastation in Oklahoma. What's left behind as deadly tornadoes carve through the area.
And the bus stop forecast for tomorrow starts off warmer. 57 could be threatening records in the afternoon as we work well into the 80s. I'm going to let you know when the cool down begins, though. It's my Weather Authority forecast.